Welcome to the Gridiron Expert. I'm Connor Hibbett, and we're going to be looking next up at the Alabama Crimson Tide for the 2025 season. And I have Travis Ryer joining us on the channel today. Travis, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Connor?
Doing fantastic. Well, before we get into the roster, Travis, please tell our viewers where they can find your content and then, of course, your affiliation with Alabama.
Yeah, I've covered Alabama in some form or fashion, covered the Crimson Tide semi full time at least since 2003. So 20 plus years. I've worked with Bama Online for a long stretch in the past, and now I currently have my own YouTube channel, Ryer on YouTube, where we do a show called Talking Tide. I team up with Tuscaloosa News sports columnist Chase Goodbread to do that show. Also do some SEC talk in general, a little bit of NFL as well, but you're going to find all of that on YouTube at Ryer on YouTube.
All right. Well, looking at the Crimson Tide, and by the way, Josh Pate, who does follow you on Instagram. So, guys, we have a rather famous person joining us on the channel today. He just came out with his power rankings, and Josh is very certain, he's very specific with his rankings versus his ratings. And his rankings, he had Alabama pretty high up there. I believe he had him fourth. And they certainly return a lot of talent this year. And we'll go ahead and look ahead to this roster, starting with the quarterback position. So obviously Jalen Milroe off to the NFL. Is it going to be between Ty Simpson and Austin Mack, most likely, you think?
Yeah, I think right now it's between Ty Simpson and Ty Simpson. It sounds like what we heard from Ryan Grubb post spring practice and kind of the narrative really working throughout those 15 practices was that Ty was unquestionably the guy coming out of spring drill. So I think, barring injury, I would be very surprised if it isn't the veteran of that group, Ty Simpson, who is behind center when Alabama heads to Tallahassee to take on Florida State. But some things could happen during the course of fall camp, I guess. Keelan Russell, the outstanding, talented true freshman, joining that mix. Obviously, Austin Mack, more of a developmental guy, going back to his stint at Washington with Grubb and Kalen DeBoer. But I'm going Ty Simpson pretty heavy at this point, at least to open the season.
And what do you think Simpson provides the Alabama offense in terms of its ceiling? Do you think that, and we're going to get into the receivers here in a second, but do you think with given the strength of the receivers this year that Ty Simpson has a very high ceiling?
I think he does. He's kind of like Mac Jones a little bit in that he has certainly waited his turn. He is a fourth year guy, so you like that. And tangibly, I think he's going to bring some things to the table that you typically don't get in today's college football at the quarterback position, a veteran. And not just a veteran. You might have a fourth year guy as your quarterback, but there's a good chance he's been a 2 or 3 year guy somewhere else. Well, that's not the case with Ty Simpson. He's been in the program. There is a familiarity amongst his teammates, a bond that I'm sure he has developed with his teammates that intangibly can be very valuable. And then skills wise, talent wise, he's very capable. He does bring some athleticism to the position. No one brings it probably to the extent that Jalen Milroe did, but Ty Simpson is anything but immobile. I think they can still do some things with him in the design quarterback run game if that's what they choose to do. And I also think, when you think about the passing game and is he going to be as effective in the vertical passing game as Jalen was? Well, we'll see about that. But I feel really confident that the quick game, the quick screens, the RPOs, those type of things, I think Alabama has a chance to be more effective with Ty Simpson behind center than it was with Jalen Milroe in those areas.
And in terms of his weapons on the outside, I mean, obviously Ryan Williams is back. Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton transfers in from Miami, Jalen Hale, Cole Adams, and then I'm going to try to pronounce this last name correct. Mbakwe.
Mbakwe. Yeah,
Mbakwe.
Jalen
There it is. Yeah,
Mbakwe. Yeah.
yeah. So and he's a speed demon. This is a deep room. Is this the most talented position group on the team?
There could be an argument made for it. I mean, Ryan Williams on his own,
Yeah.
might be, is, I would say, the most talented football player on this roster. But Jeremy Bernard, very capable, big, big, big win for them to get him back for another year. As you said, you bring in Isaiah Horton, really like the mix there between the three primary wide receiver positions, what you can do with Ryan Williams because you have Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton is be a little less predictable. You can move Ryan Williams around. You can get him the ball in different ways. But sure, Rico Scott coming into his own as a second year player, I think has a lot of potential. Latia Brooks coming in as a true freshman, a real playmaker, more of an inside receiver. Jalen Hale coming off of significant injury. Great to see him in the spring seemingly make some strides. And then you got some wild cards. You got another guy in Cole Adams, experienced, dependable guy that's coming off an injury of his own. And then Mbakwe that you mentioned moves over to offense from defense after pretty much a season at the cornerback position. Derek Meadows comes in with great size as a freshman. Bubba Hampton going into his second year, a playmaker as well. But I would say between Williams, Bernard, Horton, then you get into some potential there in the middle of that rotation. Adams, they feel really good about and what they can do with him as one of those top 4, 5, 6 guys as well. So, yeah, hard to argue against that group being very, very talented.
And this will be the first time that I'm actually going to be asking this question so far this offseason for any team that I've previewed thus far. Are there multiple wide receiver one like receivers in the receiver room? I mean, obviously Ryan Williams is top notch, but do you think that there's multiple alphas, so to speak, here?
Yeah, I think at the college level, even the Power Four level, you could make that statement where Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Isaiah Horton are concerned. I don't know if you look ahead to the NFL that they have 2 or 3 true number ones. Ryan obviously is, but sure, for the SEC at the top level of college football, Bernard can fill that spot. I think for a lot of teams, Horton the same type of thing, and some of those young guys that we still haven't seen much of, if at all, with great potential as well.
So obviously the passing game has a pretty high ceiling as we just were discussing. The running game, so the running back room is pretty deep. So Jam Miller emerged as the lead from a talented group of backs here last season. Justice Haynes was the clear number two in this backfield, and there were games at the two split carries. What is your thought about this group, and do you think that it could be even better than last year?
Yeah, I think even with Haynes moving on, you feel really good about the running back position because with Jam coming back, this is a guy that not really fancy, but can get up to top speed pretty quickly. He's more of a one cut and done type of back. What we saw a year ago isn't an offense where you're going to have anything close to, say, Derrick Henry with the amount of carries he had in 2015. But, Jam's more than capable and a guy that you trust, I think, at this point. A veteran, you can give it to him. He's going to take care of the ball in terms of ball security. He's going to get you those hard extra yards when you do run it. And with the way that this offense is going to be geared with the passing game, I think he's going to be really good in pass protection and good enough as a receiver, too. So, yeah, you like Jam Miller a lot. Richard Young going into his third year is in that competition. Daniel Hill, by all accounts, had a nice spring. Heading into his second year, a big back who has made some strides physically to maybe not be as big. Um, bring in Dre Washington as a transfer. I thought that was a very interesting move. And then you've got a guy big picture wise, an AK Deer that I think you're very, very excited about, but also a guy that is still in the learning phases in terms of everything you have to be able to do to play in an offense like this at this level. It's more than what you can do on the ball. You have to be able to do different things off of it, but depth and talent, that's another area where you like this team.
So the running game, it really starts with the offensive line. And there are some moving pieces here. So I think we can all agree that a couple of positions are probably settled here with center Parker Brailsford and then left tackle. I know he wasn't really available during the spring as much, but Caden Proctor has probably cemented himself there. Is that correct with those two positions? And then the rest is kind of up for grabs a little bit?
Yeah, bringing back Jaden Roberts at the right guard position, Parker Brailsford at center, Caden Proctor at left tackle. I would feel good about those three today if Alabama were to play the Seminoles on May the 12th. But there's still some things that can certainly sort out at one or two of those spots, and then left guard as well, because you Obviously you move on from Tyler Booker, a first round pick, and now you got Geno Vandemark, a veteran transfer from Michigan State, played a lot of football for Alabama a season ago. But you brought in Cam Dewberry from the transfer portal as well. So it could be that Dewberry, the former Texas A&M Aggie, is the starter at left guard. Will Conformby at right tackle. He always felt like it might be a couple of 3 years before we really saw him jump into a position of being able to truly down in and down out get the job done at right tackle. And that may be where we're at with him, the Tuscaloosa native. That's certainly the thought process right now. So, yeah, I would go Proctor at left tackle, Brailsford at center. Those are certainties. Jaden Roberts at right guard, Formby at right tackle. And then I think you got one of those oars that you see on depth charts. Geno
Yeah.
Vandemark or Cam Dewberry. But you got nice depth too. You got some guys that can swing between guard and center. You need to continue to develop depth at tackle and competition for that matter. And they've tried to do that at a couple of spots via the transfer portal. They got some young players that I know they're extremely excited about as true freshmen. Michael Carroll is a guy to watch as a true freshman, more so an interior player in all likelihood, a guard who can play some tackle. Jackson Lloyd comes in as a true freshman, true tackle, true left tackle type. So you like that, but you need some of these guys that are second, third year players like Ola Salina, like Joseph Ionata, um, Rock Montgomery, some of those guys. You brought in Arkel Anugwam from the transfer portal. So some guys that they're still trying to develop and create some competition while they're at it.
So, would you say for the Alabama offense, outside of potentially quarterback, given production on a year-to-year basis, would you say that the offensive line potentially has the biggest step back from the first to second string?
I think there's a pretty considerable gulf there. I think interior wise, they probably feel pretty good about what they added, especially via the transfer portal with Dewberry and the competition they've been able to create there. Olasa Leenan can play in there as well. So interior wise, I think they're fine. Tackle, Caden Proctor has all the potential in the world, but in a lot of ways, we're still waiting to see it. So he's going into his third year in the program. If he has the kind of year that is expected of him, he could be the latest 3-and-out tackle, but he's got to do it. And so I would say tackle right now still has the most to prove. And the offensive line for me in general, I know last season there was sort of the belief that it was at least okay. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was really up to Alabama standards. So that's the area I'm as interested to see play out more so than quarterback or anywhere else really on this team, how it all comes together for Chris Kapilovic and his offensive line.
So, moving over to the Alabama defense. So, we were just discussing the Alabama offensive line, potentially having some questions specifically with the backup tackles. So, the defensive line, the starters look pretty cemented here, especially interior wise. Is Tim Keenan and James Smith potentially one of the best interior duos of defensive tackles, nose tackle with Keenan, potentially in the country?
Yeah, they've got a trio there that I love the way they complement each other. You got a War Daddy on the nose or right there on the football pretty much in Tim Keenan, who fits that mold. Then you got sort of a guy in James Smith that I think he could fit three down defenses. He could be three tech probably and a four down defensive line. But in this defense, I think he brings that versatility and the ability to, as an athletic playmaker, do some things. And this defense is kind of constructed, designed in a way for these guys, unlike maybe as much with the Saban defense, to be disruptive, to make negative plays, to make tackles for loss, to get after the quarterback. So I think that fits James Smith and LT Overton, both those guys, extremely well. And then from a depth perspective, Jeremiah Beeman with a very strong spring as a second year player. I think Edric Hill still has a lot of potential. Jordan Renaud, a third year guy that they're kind of waiting on as well. I think depth looks really good there too, but their front line of Overton, Keenan, and Smith should be one of the very best in the SEC and college football for that matter.
And then at linebacker, So there's a lot of production that returns here. They have, of course, it's Alabama. They have highly rated players all over the field. So is the expectation for, is it Rusall and Jefferson to be among the mix of the most veteran-laden guys here in terms of like they got to step up and be the guys?
Yeah, Deontay Lawson coming back after the injury, obviously big. You don't like that it kind of took an injury like the one he sustained late in the 2024 season for him to land back in Tuscaloosa, but now you're really thankful to have him. Justin Jefferson is a veteran stepping in there. You lose Jahad Campbell to the first round of the NFL draft and the defending world champion Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a big time player at one of those inside linebacker positions that you're having to replace. And they went to the transfer portal. Nakai Hill-Green they bring in from Colorado to kind of help offset that with Jahad Campbell. Quay Rusall is a guy going into this third program year in the program that it's time for him to take a step up as an edge defender. So yeah, I'd say Rusall, Jefferson, Lawson is those three linebackers in this sort of 3-3-5 approach of Kane Womack make the most sense right now. Then you look at the depth, Jamarian Latham. He's kind of a tweener. He's sort of a defensive end that they've used some at that outside linebacker position. We talked about Hill Green. That's a nice luxury to have there in terms of depth. Caden Jones is a second year player that physically you look at him, he's about 6'3, 6'4, 230 pounds. So you feel confident about him. But I would say more so than the inside spots, it's more that edge spot with Rusall, Jan Zapier, Justin Hill is a true freshman, Noah Carter is a second year player. That they need some guys to really step forward at that position. They lost Q Robinson to the NFL draft. And so they need some edge guys that can establish themselves as difference makers, especially in the pass rush.
So last year, I was going to actually ask you that question next. I believe the defensive line only accounted for 9 sacks. So is there like a certainty that the pass rush is going to be better this year, or do you still think that's up in the air and it's more like we just really like the interior and the ability to stop the run? Do you think their havoc making is going to be top
Yeah,
as well this year?
I think that's what they want from that group, and that's what James Smith has all the ability to provide. It's time for him to actually do it. And I thought LT Overton had a lot of almost sacks last year. Had some opportunities to finish on the quarterback for whatever reason. It didn't always pan out. So I would see him doing more of that this year. So between Smith and Overton, definitely. But again, Rusall and some of these true edge guys, they need to get it from them as well.
So you were exactly right about Overton. So 3 sacks last year, but he did manage 28 quarterback hurries.
Yeah.
So that's a number that you would think is got to be better this year. It's got to increase this year. If you just look at it from like a sustainability aspect, like there's no way that he's going to have 28 to 30 quarterback hurries again and only having 3 quarterback sacks. So
Yeah, I mean, look, quarterback hurries are affecting the quarterback too.
right.
So there's value in those. This isn't to say there isn't. But yeah, you would like to see that number go to like 10 sacks
Yeah.
and like 18 quarterback hurries. That would be, that would or keep the 28 quarterback hurries. Just get the quarterback on the ground a little bit more than Alabama did a year ago.
And having a more quality pass rush would only help the defensive secondary.
Hmm.
And so last year, this group took a little bit of heat from outside, from the outsiders. Um, they were a relatively young group, but just looking at it here from my perspective, I think this group could have a huge improvement this year. Now, they did get better as the season progressed, and it looks like the cornerback tandem is all but set here with Jackson and Zabian Brown.
Hmm.
Is this secondary, you think, arguably maybe the strength of the defense?
It should be. Damani Jackson has played a ton of football between SC and Alabama now. Zabian Brown is a true freshman last year, made some memorable plays. He took some lumps too. But what you liked about Xavier Brown during that whole process is that he never seemed to lose his poise or his confidence. He kept coming back to make those plays. The Georgia game was kind of a microcosm of his entire season. Made some plays and got torched a few times, and then at the very end of that game, he makes the big interception to seal it for the Crimson Tide. Yeah, I would say Jackson and Brown at the corners. They bring in Cam Calhoun from Utah as another guy that's competing and can play a couple different spots. Dijon Lee coming in from high school as an early enrollee. This is a 6'3", 6'4" corner. They've got some other guys too that they're working at what call the they call it the Husky. It's sort of that star slot corner position, but they play a base 5 defensive backs. So Deshaun Jones, who came in last year as a transfer, looks like he might have the edge there at that Husky position. But then Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., Red Morgan, and again they have some true freshmen DBs like Lee and Chuck McDonald coming in, Ivan Taylor at the safety position that they're set up to not only be good this year, but for years to come. And, they got it. They got guys like Damani Jackson to come back for another year. Keon Sabb coming back at the safety position was big. And so Bray Hubbard, because Sabb went out with an injury, got a ton of experience last year. I actually like Bray Hubbard maybe even more as a middle of the field safety than I like Sabb. But either way, yeah, they got to feel great about that secondary.
Do you think this Alabama defense has an opportunity to be a top five defense in college football this year, if not arguably the best? I mean, thinking about what some of the top teams lose, like Ohio State, Georgia loses production every year, but Ohio State lost a lot of their guys. Penn State lost a couple of their top players defensively. Could this defense have a chance to be one of the best, if not the best, in the country?
I think that's their expectation. I would think Kane Wommack going into year two with these pieces that we talked about, and now a familiarity with this new scheme. Uh, the excuses have pretty much gone out the window. Yeah, they should be a top 10 type of defense in 2025. And look, a lot of people will tell you you can keep the total defense numbers, you can keep those type of things. How many points do you give up? And situationally, how good are you on third downs? Those are the areas that in today's football, today's college football or NFL or anything else, those ultimately tell the story. Can you get off the field on third down? How good are you in the red zone? And then bottom line, how many points a game are you giving up?
Name a player for this Alabama defense that is not getting talked about a lot right now that you think could have a huge breakthrough season.
Yeah, it's a good question because they return a good bit. I mean,
Yeah.
there's names across this defense that you're pretty familiar with. But I guess if I was going to choose maybe just one guy from this group, I'd go Bray Hubbard at safety. I just feel like what we saw of him at the end of last season points to a guy that's got the potential to get it done in both areas as a safety. I love Keon Sabb in terms of his aggressiveness and the physicality. What you worry about with Keon Sabb sometimes is that he's too downhill. And when you do that, the ball can go over your head from time to time. I think Bray Hubbard has a feel for the position as a former high school quarterback. And then he looks the part too. I mean, he's physically a solid guy. Showed you some things instinctively last season that you had to like. So give me the junior safety, Bray Hubbard. And another one I would say too, though, at safety that wouldn't surprise me if he comes into his own this year is Zay Mincy, a sophomore who
Okay.
started out at corner. He's kind of like Dijon Lee except he was Dijon Lee last year, and then he was 6'3", 6'4", playing corner, and then he made that move to safety. He has all the potential in the world. But as a one pick guy, I'll go with Bray Hubbard.
So, do you think Alabama has a really good chance, or at least a pretty good chance, to win the national championship this year? And I know some of our viewers are going to be like, "Really, Alabama again?" But I mean, the Crimson Tide, to me, this is at the very least a top 10, maybe potentially top five team. I know there's going to be some craziness potentially at the top of college football this year, but do you think they can win it all?
I think they can. I mean, it's got to start with getting back to the college football playoff. I mean, you got to make a 12-team field with this roster
Yeah.
in year two under Kalen DeBoer. That's the the bottom line expectation for Alabama. Whether it wins the SEC, it can be really tough to try to predict. I mean, after all, you think about Ohio State, who won this most recent playoff. Did anybody have Ohio State winning that playoff after the Michigan game? After Thanksgiving weekend, that late into the season, did anyone have Ohio State after that home loss to a 500 Michigan team that, of course, also went on to beat Alabama in the bowl game? But at that time, who had Ohio State's own fan base?
Right.
Didn't have Ohio State. I mean, Tennessee took over the stadium in
Yep.
that first round playoff game. So it just tells you how wild it can swing. But if you're at if the bottom line sort of floor level starts with the college football playoff, getting a spot in that's what it should be for this team.
Well, certainly a very talented team that's going to be in Tuscaloosa in 2025. And just speaking there with Travis Ryer. And Travis, one last time here, please tell the viewers where they can find your content.
You can find me right there at Ryer on YouTube. That's our YouTube channel. You can also catch me on X or Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days. It's at Travis Ryer, TravisReier.
Well, Travis, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks, Connor.
You have a